Hey, everyone. Great to see you all today. It's just Jim Fuse from Fusion Marketing, and we're here on the Tim and Jim Show. And Tim will be back next week when we have a good friend of the show, Nancy Deborah. But I'm excited today because we have I would say, a longtime friend of the show back for a second run because things have changed, I think, since the last time she was here. And that's Linda Ray from Aurora Consulting. And we're going to talk about something today that for some people, I don't know, I don't think it's controversial. It's the truth. And that is what have we learned since COVID started? I mean, I know for me, some people like to use the word pivot, makes me think of friends. I think of shifting. I know my business shifted a lot and still doing a lot of things virtually. I don't know, Linda. I like to call it the term when I go out and meet with people. I call it peopling. So sometimes I go peopling, and I'll tell my wife I went peopling today, and with Zoom and all these other things, and I think even for you guys, you realize that there's so many opportunities for your business outside of more than just your local area backyard, depending on what you're doing. So, but great to have you here today, Linda. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey and how you got to where you are right now?
Well, besides being starstruck with being on this show and seeing everybody who's been on this show before, and I'm just honored to be back. I think our first session was like in 2020, and we were talking about business plans. And had I known what we were going to be embarking upon, it was a foreshadow, and I didn't even know it. But my name is Linda Ray, Aurora Consulting. My entire career has been in financial services for since 1986. So I was 4 when I started, just not to do the math. And now I'm thinking I should sit up straight because the banner is like right there. But my background is insurance for about 35 years. I started in the business in 1986, tried to get out 3 times. The third time was the charm. I exited in 2017. I sold the half of the agency I owned, and we pivoted a couple times since then. But yeah, so when I'm finally retired from insurance. I'm still licensed, but I don't sell. And Trevor is a mortgage banker, also financial services, and he retired in 2018. And we started Aurora Consulting for helping businesses who were seeking financing when the banks wouldn't lend, and what types of financing were available when their local banker just was like, I can't do it for you. And that happened a lot. And that was an inspiration that came to us after having dinner with a neighbor who would go golfing with their banker and had lunch with the banker and 30 years with the banker, and went in and needed $500,000 to buy another business to get a very lucrative government contract. And instead of 500,000, they approved him for 50. And he was like, what? He ended up finding a private investor. And thus, it just sparked an idea. We developed a matrix of lenders to help businesses in all different types of scenarios, depending on how their assets would flow through the business. And then, so that was 2018. And then COVID came along, and that was shut down. We had 2 businesses that shut down. That one was shut down because of the PPP program, the payroll protection program. And Trevor was a professional musician going out and singing at bars and nursing homes and senior living facilities, both very impacted by COVID. So we were homebound, and one of our clients who had paid us to get money for a second restaurant was like, I'm hearing about this EIDL. You have my information. I've paid you. Help me out here. I don't have time for this. And so we were like, okay, someone wants to pay us for something we don't know. That's like the best opportunity, right? So we embarked upon this disaster loan financing. For 3 years, we spoke to thousands of business owners. We helped over 500 who were actual clients secure that we could quantify about $70 million in funding for businesses to survive the lockdown. And through our live shows on YouTube and Q&A, we suspect, based on feedback, that it was probably another 30 million that people who followed our advice but didn't hire us.
Mm.
So we saw some stuff we could not unsee on how businesses were managing day-to-day operations, and everything from taxes to financial documents to communications to emotions, of managing reactions to bad news, etc. And so we were kind of counselor and advisor and just trying to help people navigate the very dysfunctional system. So
Right. And so and that for me that brings up a question for me is like what have you I mean, do you think it's gotten any better or you think that like it's just still when dealing with the government I know for me I went through Hurricane Florence in 2018, which was, right before that. And just looking at the paperwork to do something like with the I was like I'm not doing this. It's too much. And am I I think that's where I got frustrated, like, they make it hard, and
yeah.
maybe it's on purpose, but that's I think for me as a business owner, I was like, "This isn't worth my time, I'll just work hard and figure out a way to make things work."
Well, the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program has been around since 1953. It was installed to assist with natural disasters all over the United States. So that and Congress appointed them to handle the EIDL program for COVID when it was declared a disaster because they had the infrastructure in place. The thing about the SBA is that they have been around for a very long time, but much like bureaucracies are, there's a lot of archaic systems in place. And we personally believe, and our opinion is that there's a lack of leadership in a capacity to move things forward, whether it's from the top, or just how agents and reps at the SBA are managing the day-to-day files. And we spoke to hundreds of SBA agents, and Trevor is, as a retired mortgage banker, he was the guy, what's
Mhm.
the what those terms, he was the ace in the hole, the Oz behind the curtain on how to handle, because he used to lend money. He was a banker, he wasn't a broker. And we're finding that with the natural disasters, because we had to pivot again because the COVID program was closed. So the natural disasters are now a point of how we can assist businesses when they want to file for these loans. And much hasn't changed, unfortunately. You would think they might have learned from COVID, but they didn't. And at least with what we're seeing. So I don't think they're making it hard on purpose. I just think there's too many chefs in the kitchen. There's too many
Mhm.
hands in the pie on how many files and documents are being touched and passed along. There's no one person that gets the file. But I
Right.
know we're not here to talk about business loans and financing, but I can tell you that what we have seen, that we feel the businesses that we talk to anyway that come to us because they're having a problem. We've also not spoken to millions of other business owners, so maybe they had success, but we're not hearing from them. Okay.
Mhm.
But some of the business owners that we had the opportunity and privilege to work with, they were not helping their case. They
Mm.
were contributing to the problem, and it's just because they weren't aware of certain things that really made a difference or that were impacting their file negatively. And the thing is, you don't know what you don't know, you
Right.
know? So you have to, that's why, wisdom and experience and age comes with, learning tough lessons and then hopefully applying into future activities so that it doesn't happen again.
That's right. Yeah, that's always been one of my favorite sayings is like, "Don't make the same mistake twice," right? We're
Exactly.
gonna make mistakes, but learn from it so you don't do it again. And so it's really interesting, because we're seeing a lot recently with the banks in general, right? There's some of these banks that have shut down. People are concerned about their deposit safety. Is it time for me to start stuffing my money under a mattress? But then what I found interesting, Linda, and I don't know if you've seen this, is I've started to notice more and more, like even when I go to my local grocery store, that when you're doing the self checkout, now they're like, we don't take cash anymore. We only take cards.
Mm,
So now we're getting into this whole electronic money thing, and we can get into conspiracy theory if we wanted, but it's like you know, whether it's cash, I mean, you're starting to see the crackdown on the crypto stuff with
mm.
the SEC. So as a business, you're kind of like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And because even when you figure out how can people pay me, I had guest a couple of weeks ago that's a merchant processing company. It's like people are taking a portion of your money for you to get money. So it's like, and I don't know if it's gotten worse over the last 3 years. I think it probably has, because now it's like, we're kinda becoming this cashless society. I mean, what are your thoughts there?
Well, I think there are a lot of things that are happening that could be extremely positive on generating revenue and how to seamlessly potentially, get that into the pocket, right? But for me, the main thing is what we again going back to what we saw is how proactive is somebody in their business
Mhm.
and how are they setting up their onboarding for new clients. I watched that show and I was contributing in the comments because we we did all the things to make it easy for clients to buy from us, and
Right.
we got hit with the clawbacks. A couple people clawed back
Yes.
their fee even though we did our work, and we were very proactive. We had signed contracts and agreements and
Mhm.
documentation to show the work product, etc. And it didn't matter with the banks because
Right. They
they really
complained, and now they're gonna come and take that money from you until you prove
right.
that you did the work, yeah.
But I think it just is a lot. You have to really kind of look at your business with foresight of there are things that are going to impact us and set us back in a bit. And that's because there's just people out there that are looking to make money very easily and it's going to cost you money. And I don't know, for me as a business owner and having been in insurance, and if you can sell insurance, I feel like you might be able to sell anything because it's like not the sexiest thing to sell ever. But it's really a planning process of sales and being good at sales. If you're relying on one thing or one way or one person, or it's not going to work because everything is temporary and nothing lasts forever. So it's just a matter of continuing to grow the business. And if scaling your business is an ambition, not everybody needs to. Some people are slowing down and retiring. So then sales may not be, but there are ebbs and flows always. And
Mhm.
COVID taught us that. And diversifying, as in, don't maybe put $1 million in one bank, split it up, maybe. I don't know, right?
Right.
Or don't rely on crypto being the thing that is going to pay your bills because maybe
Yes.
not, right?
Maybe
So,
not, that's right.
and so, I mean, I've been through all these things and seen all these things. And I don't know. I think there's a way to we have to like not everything is get rich quick and shortcut, do it
Mhm.
quick, avoid this step to get there faster. It doesn't work. It might
Yeah.
work in the short term, but the long term you're cutting your nose off to spite your face because you're missing out on skills that will help when things aren't great, and
Right.
being really strong and confident when things aren't great, but going and keep going. And that's the thing about COVID. Everybody, it was dark. It was a
Mhm.
dark time. When we knew 2 businesses were out, we didn't know that we were going to have success with the disaster program. We didn't know. We just knew what we had experience with and how we could just talk to people about it, and somebody may listen or maybe they won't.
Right.
And that's the other thing about business, not being shy. Like, I'm a huge marketing is magical to me, period.
Hmm.
I may not be selling sexy stuff, but I love the process of sharing what I do have for people to know maybe I can solve a problem, right? And so, yeah, so Catherine, yeah, it's exactly. She knows. She knows.
Yes.
And I can't see the comments in the studio here, which I love StreamYard, so I'm used to seeing the comments. So if I didn't see her other comments.
Oh
So
yeah, I'll put that. She. This goes back to your credit denial thing, where they buy
yep.
from you and then they ask for their money back.
I mean, I'm not ashamed to say I do not understand. But, I do not understand when people do that it's just not nice, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's number 1. And number 2, I think we have to prepare for it. I never thought, not only did we know we would potentially get a clawback, and that's why we had signed agreements, but I never thought we would lose the 2 cases.
Wow.
And it was $25, $2,500 each.
Yeah.
So we lost that, took a hit, and we knew the program was closing. So we actually stopped taking credit cards. But that was just a decision we made for our
Hmm.
scenario. I'm still not sure like how we're gonna do it going forward, but credit cards
Yeah,
is
because it does make you it does definitely make you leery.
mhm.
Because I went through that same, I think mine was 4,000 and I was able to win, but still, the fact that one day my bank account is missing $4,000 with no, an immediate explanation was scary, and I
I'm
was
so glad you
pissed.
won. Wow, wow,
Yeah, well,
wow.
yeah, trust me, it was a lot of documentation,
Yeah,
and it was just, something I won't forget, and so it makes you leery of working with people that you really don't know,
that's right.
if anything, and makes you wanting to get into things that, is a little bit more, I don't know if you wanna almost say cut and dry. It's kinda like, even upfront payments, right? Like, you gotta pay me upfront,
Yep.
and maybe it's a monthly thing, so you're gonna know within a month if there's gonna be a problem and before you invest too much. But I wanna go back to,
Mhm.
what you were talking about with, some of these changes. So one, I love how you brought up and Catherine kinda reinforced, it's these fundamentals of business, right? That it
Mhm.
doesn't matter, because here's what's I mean, the last 3 years have been the last 3 years, but of course, none of us were around because I know you're a young person. Weren't around for the depression, right?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
and, I think it was probably even worse back then, but these people recovered. But I think that what's been interesting, and we're seeing it now that the threat experts are starting to pop up, these people that are constantly changing what they are supposedly good at,
Mm.
and when you really look at it in the end, like, the next shiny object goes away, what do they really have as a business? What is it that they really offer people? So it seems like there's this cycle of, like, oh, like, there were people that were making money off of mask, as an example, right?
Mm.
Well, now there's not the same market for it. And so it's kinda like, well, what is it that your business really does that solves a problem
Mhm.
that makes people wanna come back to you? And so you having come from, yeah, in the insurance industry is definitely one of those things that people are like, "Yeah, am I getting ripped off?" You hear about, even that's changed, right? The rates keep going up and they're denying people more, and then you're like, "Why did I pay for this?"
Mhm.
Um, so how are you guys kinda, how do you would you say, you, because 'cause you're not doing the EIDL anymore, correct? You've kinda
No, we
moved away
are.
from it?
We are
You are,
doing the
okay.
natural disaster and the business. It's really net niche, which I never thought, because I was always a generalist with insurance. I
Mhm.
sold all lines of
Right.
insurance. So, but then I kind of carved out restaurants and law firms for insurance. But we're doing EIDL, and it's kind of broken up into a couple of different buckets that we can do it. But to your point of, all the experts, they're like micro experts for something that's new and shiny. This the shiny object niche, development. I'm a fan of niches. I'm absolutely a fan of niches.
That's
I
right. They say
think
the niche, the riches are in the niches,
the
right?
riches are in the niches. I think, though, what happens and what we've seen with business owners is there's just not enough proactive drive to plan out, knowing that, like, here's a perfect example. You brought up Threads and Twitter. I have loved Twitter since 2009. I am not really active on Twitter anymore, and I'm still grieving about it. But things change. So it's fine to be a niche with a product that you can solve a problem and maybe make some money, but it's not a long-term plan because things change. And the biggest mistake that we saw with businesses, now again, because it was securing for funding, tax returns. Tax returns, and I'm going to hopefully make my point without being a woman in her late 50s and not lose it, but the tax returns and how businesses manage cash flow and projections and filing said monies that come in. That has been the house of cards that Catherine brought up. It has been the most epic failure for businesses who needed working capital to survive. And some we saw, luckily, have thrived beyond. But it's all starts with the cash flow, managing the cash flow, not underwriting everything under the sun and thinking your net income or that your gross revenues on the tax return is going to get you approved, because they're looking at the bottom line.
Right.
They're looking at what all you deducted, because that means you're spending money elsewhere, and how are you going to pay back the loan? So with business owners who aren't money people, they aren't numbers people, they're not spreadsheet people, whatever the logic is that could potentially be an excuse, it's really about taking ownership of the future. And the reason the future and planning the future is so vital is because if you need money, they look back 3 years on how you managed your money and your business and your finances and your income and expenses.
Right.
And that has been the death of businesses to get extra money, to whether it's to survive or, again, like I said, thrive and expand and maybe add something on their building or buy a building or open a new place, you name it. So, again, niches aren't terrible, but it's how are you managing everything else to know when things, are down, and are you able to save
Do you
somehow?
think some of this too, though, is I think it's like, I don't know if you want to call it tax avoidance, but I've also noticed a rise, and some of it I'm leery of is this rise of all these not-for-profits, right? Like, I'm going to create a nonprofit and I'm going to help veterans, and it's like they're finding a way to, I guess, stash their money. And then it's like, are you really spending it on this cause that you say you're about? And I think sometimes businesses like, oh, we're going to start a nonprofit, so it's like it almost becomes like a shell corporation. Are you seeing some of that too?
Yeah, there's definitely people who, and again, these are shortcuts. I'm not saying if you start a nonprofit that you have,
Right.
malicious
Right.
intention at all. I'm not saying that, but we have seen too many people who don't want to do the work. They don't want to put in. It's sort of like, I want to lose weight, but you're not going to the gym and you're not eating the fries. You have to put in the work and the learning and scale that learning curve and put in as much effort more that you do to avoid something you don't like. I have this story of this guy that I know, and he does some work around my house sometimes, and he's a terrible communicator, and he's not organized, and he's just scheduling something with him is horrible. And I'm like, come on, dude, listen, you text me, you know how to call me. Like, why? What's the problem here? He's like, oh, Linda, you know, I'm really bad at that. And I'm like, nope, nope. Like that is, oh, I mean, I have some pet peeves, but that's no. And so if I know if people aren't, my other like second biggest thing that has helped me for almost 40 years survive and excel beyond change is collaboration. If you know you don't know, so we all know when we're not, we all know when we're procrastinating. We all know
Mhm.
when we're not prioritizing. The thing is, though, if you think it's okay, but then wonder why things aren't going well, that's a big red flag to maybe I should talk to somebody. And even if not to hire somebody, maybe you just start baby steps, like find a friend, phone a friend, have an accountability buddy that you can talk to once a week. Like, I don't know how to do this. And, you can share, and then you can bounce off ideas. We get in our own way with our projections and things that we fear. So we may not even know the answer because we don't want to know the answer because it's
Right.
too scary, or it's too much work. And so that's what we saw with a lot of businesses. They didn't know where their corporation papers were. They didn't know what a P&L was. I mean, we can go on all day. I won't, again, because this is the least sexiest show you've had. So
No, this has been fun. I always enjoy these conversations because we're talking about things that people need to consider. And even going back to what you just said, right? It is always fascinating how and I guess because I do, digital marketing consulting or talk with companies, and they'll be like they want this, and I don't know if it's a generational thing, um, but it's like everybody wants this quick fix. It's like,
Mhm.
"Hey, I need you to help me with my social media," and it's like 2 weeks later, "Hey, we're not seeing anything yet." Right?
So one of my iterations after I left the agency and wasn't selling insurance anymore was marketing for insurance agencies. I was like, oh my God, that was my jam, right? So I'm gonna go and do that and hang a shingle and sell marketing to insurance agencies. I'm licensed. I know it. I've done it. I was
Right?
in all kinds of public, like I was somebody, right? So
Yes.
and nobody, like, it was the worst niche of the thing that is the most fun to do, marketing, right? But no, the insurance agents, 3 months, my contracts averaged 3 months, and they started complaining after 2. Meanwhile, I had been at my agency for 18 years, and my social media started in '09. It's like,
Mhm.
wow. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it is interesting because, especially, and I think that industry, along with the financial industry, you always see these people that it's like, "Hey, you guys should be doing some marketing," and they either use the regulations as the excuse, or they don't wanna stick to it because I think it kinda goes back to, and I'm sure you could do it not only with that, but the other stuff you're doing. And I think you guys did a great job with that with your YouTube channel. It's educating people, right?
that's right.
It's people gotta understand what they're getting themselves into, and it's not always about conversion, and I think that's the big mistake that a lot of companies make. you know, Brand new restaurant opens and they wanna run Facebook ads, and then they wonder why people aren't showing up. It's like, "Well, I don't really know anything about you yet. You don't
That's
have
right.
reviews, you don't have any video that shows me that the place is clean." And then, if they can't handle the influx, I mean,
You
I
know,
think we're seeing that especially in the I guess I'll call it the food industry, where they're having a problem finding employees because people either, I guess, they don't wanna work anymore, and that's a whole 'nother show, um, or they just don't pay enough for these people to make a living, and so it's like, okay, so then I show up at your place, your restaurant, and I get poor service, and then I'm not gonna come back.
I think
You
it's all about leadership. I think it starts with the person who is most passionate about the business, and you have to share that, ambition is can be contagious if you are hiring correctly, and that's a whole other show as well. So leadership, hiring, marketing, and you brought up another good point. Like, you do an ad, but it's sort of like when you go to a networking event.
Hmm.
Yes, you might go up to a stranger and shake their hand, now that we can do that, and say hello. But if they're not engaging, you're like, okay, nice to meet you, and you move on, right?
Right.
It's kind of the same difference in that regard. And one thing about the insurance industry, they're having a really tough time now. It's like one of the hardest markets in decades. And, but those that are thriving are the ones that have had the long tail planning of, this is who we are, this is how we can help you, the credibility, building the authority, and it's very easy to make money in insurance, and that's the problem.
Hmm.
It's the best business model if you think about it. The renewals come in, and you're every
Yeah.
month
Well,
you're
and you've gotta have
and you got to
homeowners
have
insurance.
insurance.
You gotta have car insurance. In some cases, you gotta have renter's insurance, or you should, right?
No,
Because if
yes, you should always have renter's insurance.
yeah, so those are 3 right there, and we haven't even gotten to the health piece.
Yeah.
And
Or the life and disability, which is
yes,
a complete, like,
yeah,
that's, you have to, like, you're not mandated to get it, so you have to want to get it for a reason. Again, future planning.
yes.
So there's kind of a theme here. And Trevor and I, we work together, we live together, and we have meetings together. We have, we meet on a weekly basis, sometimes a couple times a week, to plan, to
Mhm,
project, to strategize, and to take hits of what isn't working, and what we do about it. And you kind of have to gamify it. If something isn't working, there's something else around the corner that will. It's just a matter of experimenting and playing. And I think that's where it gets lost, because if you look at it as work, you're going to avoid it. If you look at it
mhm.
as experimenting and testing, and then having, building evidence of something that is viable, then super fun, way better mindset, way better perspective, in my opinion. So,
Yeah, I like how you bring up that whole and I think we both definitely see it. There is this fear of doing new things, because it's like it reminds me of like when I first was, well, I mean, not the very first time I joined when I became a lieutenant in the Marines, and I was in the financial management field, and I was at the school for that, and asked the question of like, well, why is it that we spend every dime we get every year? Why aren't we like, because I was a finance major, why aren't we like doing, capital investment decisions? Well, that's because that's the way we've always done it,
oh,
which, is one of my
don't
pet
even,
peeves.
don't even get me started. My
But
God.
but that's what you see with these businesses, like, well,
Mhm.
we've always run ads in the newspaper, or and it's like, okay, but what is that doing for you now? You've got me here because you want to increase sales, and you're not
Mhm.
increasing sales because you are doing things the way you've always done it. And when we could probably say the road is now littered with these companies like Blockbuster and Kodak, and even I would probably say Sears now, and what Bed Bath and Beyond, right? They didn't adapt. You've got restaurant chains that are, struggling because they haven't figured out how do we do, delivery, because people want their food, that way, because they don't want to come into the restaurant. And even like what amazes me, it's funny observing people's behavior on social media, and I don't know if you feel the same way. Is I like to call them the broadcasters. Like,
Mm,
they put stuff out there about themselves, and
mm.
I've even seen a couple on threads like, "Well, I don't think this is gonna work." It's like, "Yeah, but that's because all you're doing is talking about yourself, or talking about how you don't think this is gonna work, but you're not actually engaging with people and having a conversation, right?
Mhm.
You're not getting that goes back to your in-person peopling thing, right? I'm not getting to know, like, and trust you to wanna do stuff with you." And yeah, so yeah, that's been something that I've been thinking, because That's what I've liked about Threads, and I'm not saying it's gonna bring you more business, but it's like I'm getting to re-engage or know these people that I've known for a while that I hadn't seen them because the algorithm had made them invisible, and it's not
Mhm.
intentional, right? Because when you've got hundreds or thousands of people you're following, even like on Facebook, Facebook doesn't automatically say, "Hey, we know you're friends with Linda, but we're not gonna let you see her content unless you go work to find it." And I think that so far has been what I've thought has been interesting with Threads, but, it's still it's only been a week.
It's only been a week, exactly. I think one clue of trying something new, and that rhymes, did not plan on that, but is if you have an idea or you're politely stalking somebody that you admire and you think maybe, oh, that's a good idea, maybe I can apply it in my business, and but then your brain says, screeching halt, who do you think you are? That's the clue to do it, because that's the thing that could be the next thing for you to make a little bit of extra money, meet that next client, feel better about something that you were doubting yourself about. And a lot of this running a business, it's really all about what's going on up here,
Mhm.
because anyone can build a workflow on HubSpot and automate your emails to let people know, but it's like, "Oh, I'm not gonna go live." It's like, "Why
Right.
not?" Okay, maybe it'll suck the first time, but
Right.
just keep going. I mean, we look back on the videos we started doing in 2018 and 2019, and I'm like, "Wow."
Oh, yeah, trust me. Guilty as charged, whether it's been this show or even Chris and I on Amazon. We look at some of our first shows, and in our opinion, they're cringeworthy. Other people might think they're great, but I don't come from a video background, right?
Right. Who
You've gotta
knows?
teach yourself. Right, right,
We're
yeah,
not
who
all
was born.
Casey Neistat, right?
Yeah, we weren't
So
all born with video and writing capabilities and all this, right? It goes back to you gotta dig into it, you gotta learn it, just like what you guys did, learning the process of EIDL. I mean, I think sometimes what's fun is when you have that client that you're honest and like, "Hey, I really haven't done much of this before, but if you'll let me, like they're your sandbox and your guinea pig, and it can be a win-win for both of you." And I think like the fact that you're on here live, right? To your point is that's one of the things I've been trying to encourage more business owners to do is like, look, even if you don't want to have your own show,
mhm,
which, and kind of that whole thing is you being on the show, the star of the show today is not me. It's you, Linda, right? Because we're learning about you. Um, and so sometimes it's like, don't go start your own show, be a guest.
mhm.
Go try to get on all the
Play.
podcasts and live streams you can, because then you're getting to spread your message and you're getting to meet new audiences that you didn't previously know. And I think, but people would rather go to a closed networking group and think that that group of people that they've now sworn allegiance to are somehow going to pay their bills. I mean, I've been in those groups before, and I think sometimes they can work, but I also think you start to limit yourself because you fall into this, I don't know, I won't call it a trap, but you fall into this system
Mhm,
that's really, I think, holding you back, and I think I've learned, and I don't know about you as well, especially going from when you had your own agency, and I mean, well, technically, you now have a different type of agency as Aurora
mhm,
Consulting, but the most important thing that you have as a business owner is your time, and how you use it is critical. So you know, I'm very leery of anything that's gonna tie me, and I joke with this, retired general I know, I hate meetings. And he does
mm,
too, because a lot of times it's a time suck, and you're
mhm,
not getting anything out of it, you're not moving your business forward, and so, that's what's kept me away from some of these groups because it's like, "What do you mean I gotta go every week at this time, and am I gonna get anything out of it?" And for me, going back to, like, what I learned since COVID, during COVID, was some of these groups I was a part of, that I was paying money to be a part of, I wasn't you know, they weren't supporting my business. They
mm,
weren't telling people that you're doing this or doing that. And so it's like, why am I going to continue to be a part of that? Because that's what everybody says you should do.
But now you've made an informed decision based
Mm-hmm.
on actual practical experience that you might have avoided, but now you know.
Yes.
And that's the thing. That's, that's like tuition, whether it's time
Yes.
or the investment. It's a tuition in learning something on how to apply or not apply, or how to pivot or not pivot. Pivoting is happening not just in careers, but also like just profit centers or
Mm-hmm.
products, or who you're aligned with, strategic alliances, and all those things. So yeah, but the first thing is knowing what you're not good at, and then how can you, like, you don't want to have meetings. I don't know if you're talking about strategic meetings or like the networking
The
meetings.
networking meetings.
Yeah. So that's like, okay, I don't want to do this. I mean, I did that for years too. I was in networking for, I feel like it was definitely decades. So,
Mm-hmm.
and now we don't. Okay. COVID broke me a little bit socially because I am an ambivert. All right. Anyone, if you're an ambivert out there, okay, hands up, baby, because if you're an extrovert, you're on. But when you're an introvert, you're out. Like, like, don't call me. And definitely don't call me if I text you. No. Because I don't want to talk to you. There's a reason we're texting.
That's why I texted you.
But anyway, so yeah, there's a lot of things about business that sucks. Come on, we know this. But it's just finding the gems and the nuggets that inspire us, that drive us to and replicate that. I did so because of our experience with COVID. We actually documented a lot of mistakes and made a project out of it. 366 business mistakes to account for every day of the year, because you
Wow.
can take a day off, but your brain is still like kind of, the operating system is still running in the background, even
Yeah.
if you're not present and accounted for per se. But yeah, so we documented 366 mistakes, and that was kind of our, gift to the world, if you will, for people that I don't know what mistakes I haven't made yet. It's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
great, we've made them for you. So, but people still don't. The clients that we helped get the loans, a lot of clients. We have a product now that we sell. It's called the post-closing blueprint. And it's basically, we break down the loan agreement that you signed as a business for that money. And you're married to the SBA for 30 years with this loan, because it's a 30-year loan. And so we developed a product of everything that you can imagine, not only the provisions in the loan that you're responsible for and the restrictions and permissions, but also things that we've actually seen clients have to deal with every day in their business, in the normal course of business, that you have to make change. You move, you take on an investor, you sell part of your assets. We have learned that these are still little mini processes within the SBA system that a government borrower is going to have to contend with in their business. And we put that together. So my point is this: they're already starting to make the mistake of thinking, well, the SBA is never coming after me. You have to submit financials. You can get audited at any time. And they're like, they're never coming after me. It's like, not now, but
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
So what, so Linda, what would you say is the thing that you guys are like, what's the future of Aurora Consulting? Where are you guys headed? I know like you said, you're still doing the EIDL, but I know you guys have been talking about doing some other things. Cause I know you're in I think we're around the same age. I'll just put it that way. But you may feel, I don't know, maybe you don't feel like me. Me and my wife are like, I don't want to retire because
Yeah.
I don't know what I would do. I'm not going to play golf every day. I get bored. I mean, what is your guys' plan?
We want to, we still want to provide expertise to people because we know they need it when they need it. But we've actually onboarded a consultant to assist, so Trevor doesn't have to work so hard. There he is.
There he is.
This is our loan officer guy. He's having lunch. Okay. He's having lunch with a consultant that we brought into the business for that quasi sort of semi-retired exit strategy.
I have one thing to share with the audience.
Yes.
The SBA is violating a federally created written contract every day.
Okay.
Oh,
We've already experienced it where they're violating the terms of their
Yeah.
own contract by
Yeah.
telling
Wow.
people we're making up the rules as we go along.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what that agreement says. And yesterday we found out they're telling people who did not have a personal guarantee because the loan was less than $200,000. They're now telling people, oh, if you default, we're coming after you personally.
Yeah.
wow.
Anyway, so you can't come in the end of the show. Okay. Goodbye.
Now we have to have a whole nother show because of
Bombastic. But so yeah, we've onboarded a consultant that we can delegate to, because that's my favorite thing to do is delegate. And yeah. Yes, that's right. Oh, he's absolute Nadia. Hello, love. And so we also have online products. So if people want to not hire us, but DIY the loan process, just like, okay, if I'm going to apply for a loan, what do I have to do and what shouldn't I do? What do I need to know and what should I expect? We have a couple of written, they're not quite courses, they're sort of like ebooks, and we have those for sale. So and Nadia is a glitch guru. She has
Nadia's there?
Nadia, yes, honey. No, she's not here. Stop.
she's in the comments.
She's in the comments. Settle down. Anyway, yeah, so we have a few things. You can go to my website, auroraconsulting.biz. Everything is there. But the Biz Glitch project is really a general business. And then everything else is disaster loan related. So, oops, I just hit my mic.
Because we know there's always going to be another disaster. I mean, in fact,
That's right.
unfortunately, your guys are dealing with one just up the road from you in Vermont and New Hampshire with all this flooding is going to put some businesses in some serious need or help. And it's I feel for those people, and I think whether you believe in global warming or not, there's disasters happening every year.
And so we have part of our YouTube channel now also in the community tab is because we did try to keep up with doing shorts related to disasters that were approved and that the SBA could start lending, whether it's, Tulsa, Oklahoma, or,
Right.
West Texas and all that. And it's very difficult to do videos on every single disaster. But now the community tab, I'm documenting what disasters are newly coming into the system so that people have a way. And again, play with the algorithm that Google. That's how we kind of got on the map with EIDL as consultants, because of our YouTube channel and the Google My Business. We were flooding Google My Business with our data and our content and our announcements of SBA updates.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's so smart. I think, that's even the one thing that, and I know you guys continue to do that. And I need to do more of it, is YouTube is where you're kind of like, here's where you can advertise what I like to call your live solving or your recorded solving of people's problems, right? They're not going to find you on Facebook. I'm sorry, unless you want to spend a lot of money on ads. Even Instagram, right? I mean, it's kind of hit or miss. And I think LinkedIn is still somewhat of an untapped market because there's still a lot of people that think of LinkedIn as an online job resume
search.
Yeah.
Well, I can say from personal experience, besides my insurance career and marketing, bringing that to the next level for me and for the agency, when we started the EIDL and helping, we started again with that first one client, and then it turned into 40 clients that found us, like specifically curated us to help them with the loan. And then Google and YouTube, and it was 12 leads a day that were coming in. Now, again, niche, disaster, desperation, that is certainly part of a formula that does help. But I was posting everywhere, Jim. I was Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, because I was like, it's a search engine. I'm going.
That's right. That's right.
It's like everywhere. And the other thing businesses don't do, that is how we, funneled down our marketing, was, how'd you find us? Google, YouTube, Google, YouTube.
Game over, right?
Yeah. Oh, the other thing though, it was Trevor was answering comments in groups specific to our niche.
Nice.
So in the beginning, there was also people reaching out because they trusted him based on his comments in a Facebook group.
Yep.
So that's the Facebook groups is still a thing, evidently, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was part of we started a group a couple of times when I was living in North Carolina when hurricanes would happen, because that's how people were able to communicate, because it wasn't always easy. And even back then, it was funny because people would always like, right, now we're on a new app with Threads. People were like, oh, we're going to go to this other app for everyone to kind of communicate during this storm because the power might go out. It's like, well, Twitter actually used to work quite well, even in low power situations. As long as you could get a signal, you could get stuff out. But we found that Facebook groups, at least back then, was a good way to communicate, because people could, share stuff, and the moderators might say like, oh my gosh, somebody needs help here or there. So I think there's still something to be said for that. So
yeah,
who knows? Maybe Threads will become that way to
they have a long way to go, man.
They do. Yeah.
I mean, there's no DMs, there's no hashtags, there's no GIFs, there's no search, which is like the top of the list. I don't know how to curate.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean, D. Scott Smith was on here earlier, and I made a comment on his thread. It's like he posted it 18 hours ago, and I just saw it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
pros and cons for everything.
Yeah.
So I could talk to you forever. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll have to do this again. Maybe I don't know. Well, do you guys have a show or a podcast?
I do. I'm kind of on summer hiatus, but when you reached out and I saw that I could book for today, I was like, on it. But yeah, you have to come on to my Simple Sense for Small Business. Oh, by the way, you should subscribe to my Simple Sense for Small Business channel on YouTube. Hey, I got the greatest URL you can't forget. It's youtube.com/@smallbusinessadvice.
Wow.
I can't believe I got that.
You got that. That is amazing.
We're definitely going to continue this there.
Yes, that is awesome. Well, thank you, Linda, for coming today. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Next week, we'll have Tim will be back with Nancy Deborah, and we'll be having a lot of fun. And hard to believe, but next month will be the 5-year anniversary of this show. I can't believe that it's been 5 years. It just seems like yesterday when I was just a young baby.
So good. That is so impressive.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you all next week. Take care.
Ciao.